that way. And on that night, there's a lot of bloodshed, and there are sacrifices made to Satan. There is a person who plays the part of this in this high council that has to do with this high council. He's not on the high council, but he has to do with playing the part of Satan. He is a televangelist on TBN. He used to be, he filled in for a little while as a lead singer on Iron Butterfly many years ago, and he has long blonde hair.
What's his name?
At this point, I don't recall his name, and it just, I recognize his face. I saw it recently on TBN, and then this is his cover, or he is DID, and he plays this part, the great deceiver Satan, on that night, on Halloween, at this church. And that is what happens on Halloween. And I mean, what else I must say, which is going on with Halloween in this country, it's just becoming so popular. It is also to desensitize people to the whole thing, and even this backlash Christian movement that wants to call it the Harvest Festival. It does not realize that the Harvest Festival has to do with Druidic religion. And again, they are still doing the same thing and celebrating the Harvest Festival. That's what the Harvest Festival is about.
Are many of the so-called Christian rituals, because that's what they are, or festivals or ceremonies, are they actually, to most Christians, unknowing representations of these satanic rituals?
Yes, they are. One, for example, Christmas has to do with it's a time, it comes right after the winter solstice, which is a satanic or a Druidic celebration. It has to do, there's a day in there called that day which is not a day. It has to do with the killing of the old king and the birth of the new king, which is a Druidic day. On the 24th or the 25th at midnight, there is a ceremony that's specifically for children, and it's called the last bulb on the tree.
Where does that come from?
That is something that's used with children. It's part of programming them into the whole thing. And there were things that would happen to the child that hung the last bulb on the tree on Christmas Eve, as it was a common practice to decorate the tree on Christmas Eve, and the tree in itself is a phallic symbol, and it's paganistic. Christmas is based on pagan day, and back to Roman times, and Christians have given it, they think they have given it Christian meaning, and it means something else, and it does not. But there is the case with the last bulb on the tree that has something to do with what happened to this little girl, John Benet.
John Benet Ramsey?
Yes, John Benet Ramsey. And this occurred on this night because of the day it has to do with. It comes right after the winter solstice, which is a satanic or a Druidic celebration. It has to do, there's a day in there called that day which is not a day. It has to do with the killing of the old king and the birth of the new king, which is a Druidic day. On the 24th or the 25th at midnight, there is a ceremony that's specifically for children, and it's called the last bulb on the tree.
Where does that come from?
That is something that's used with children. It's part of programming them into the whole thing. And there were things that would happen to the child that hung the last bulb on the tree on Christmas Eve, as it was a common practice to decorate the tree on Christmas Eve, and the tree in itself is a phallic symbol, and it's paganistic. Christmas is based on pagan day, and back to Roman times, and Christians have given it, they think they have given it Christian meaning, and it means something else, and it does not. But there is the case with the last bulb on the tree that has something to do with what happened to this little girl, John Benet.
John Benet Ramsey.
Yes, John Benet Ramsey. And this occurred on this night because of the day it has to do with, and the ceremony that it has to do with. And there were rituals done on that night to these little children. So that is totally tied into it.
I have heard that Jean Benet's name is relevant to the rituals. Do you know anything about that?
John Bay. John Bay is a satanic deity, or Satan. John Bay is a name for Satan. And that name is just closely tied in. It's so close, and I don't understand why it hasn't come out, and that I know of, it hasn't been talked about. But that is why she was killed on the day that she was killed, and her family, as far as I'm concerned, her family is involved in this, and that there's always a price to be involved in it. She was the price. This little girl lost her life.
Can we talk about some of the famous names that people around the world would know who, in your experience, have taken part in these rituals that you've conducted? You say you've conducted them in Europe and the United States. Can we start with the United States?
Yes. I have seen at rituals, I have seen George Bush. I have seen Madeleine Albright. I have seen Henry Kissinger. I have seen Ronald Reagan. And I have also, by the way, seen his wife, Nancy Reagan. I have seen Hillary Clinton before I knew she was Hillary Clinton at the time at these rituals. She is involved. The other people that I have named and I have seen shapeshift into reptilians. I have not seen Hillary Clinton actually shapeshift, but she is involved. I have seen the two sons when they were young, the two sons of George Bush present at these rituals.
Are these the sons that have become governors?
Yes. One is in Florida and one is in Texas. I have seen, did I mention J. Rockefeller? And he shapeshifts. I've seen George Deukmejian and Ronald Reagan again, having been governor in California. There have been people such as Newt Gingrich I saw, and I didn't know at the time that he was Newt Gingrich. I recognized that he was Newt Gingrich when Clinton came into power, and after he was, Newt Gingrich was then elected Speaker of the House. And I was horrified to realize that this man was also there. All of this has affected me to the point I don't vote. All of these people seem to all be connected to the Illuminati, and I don't feel like being part of having anything to do with them.
Presidents like Carter and Ford and Clinton.
I've seen Ford there.
Gerald Ford.
Gerald Ford, yes.
Are they all reptilian bloodlines?
I haven't seen Carter shapeshift.
You've seen him at rituals, have you?
Yes. Gerald Ford, I have seen shapeshift. And Johnson, also.
Lyndon Johnson.
Lyndon Johnson. Also, Dr. Joseph Mengele, who took me around to these rituals a lot of the time, was also a shapeshifter. And there were also people that there are people in the European countries that I've seen shapeshift and be involved. And this it doesn't surprise me any more than it does the people in this country doing it. Is just for some reason more shocking, and it cuts even deeper, because I've seen the Queen Mother there, and I have seen the Queen there. I've seen Princess Margaret there. I've seen Charles there, and they shapeshift. And I have seen I'm not coming up with his name right now, but he was president in France after de Gaulle. He was there. I've seen him there. I've seen the Rothschilds there. I used to see the Rothschild that lived in England there, but the one that still goes there and is a shapeshifter, Guy de Rothschild, Baron Guy de Rothschild, has been to all of these rituals and has been over in this country under the name of Dr. Barrington and tried to program me, and has impregnated me several times with eggs that were taken from me years ago and were impregnated with semen from Pindar and then placed back into my uterus. This has happened to me twice, once at age 39 and this year right before I turned 43. And I had told my therapist ahead of time, before I ever could have known that this had been done to me. And it's happened at a certain place in where I have been living in the San Fernando Valley. It's happened at a house on Tyrone Street in Sherman Oaks. And my understanding is that there have been other survivors that have talked about this location as having been involved with programming and so on. And Baron Guy de Rothschild has tried to program me. All these years he has been trying to control me, get me back under control. And the Marquis de Libero is someone else that attends all of these functions and is, since he is the one in power, he attends all these functions. I have seen Tony Blair there, and he shapeshifts. I have seen Prince Philip there. They all have their quirks as to how they act, even in their reptilian form. And they all, I mean, they act. They don't act all like robots, but they have their quirks. They have their so-called personalities, but they are all cold-blooded. They would kill at the drop of a hat. I have even, since I've seen the picture of some people that are talking about this subject, I've seen them, when I've seen their pictures, I've recognized them. I did a double take a few weeks ago when I saw again someone who's been talking about around this subject, and it seems to be popular right now.
Who's that?
This man by the last name of Sitchin. I've seen at rituals, and he is a shapeshifter. And I did a double take when I saw the picture of him, because I recognize him. And there's another person that I've seen, this Gardner, Sir Gardner.
That Lawrence Gardner?
Sir Lawrence Gardner. And he had recently written an article that was out in Nexus magazine. Part of it was about the menstrual blood, and what really triggered me was when he called it Starfire, because that is the name of one of the aspects of the three women who are the dressed mother goddess. That is my name in all of this. So this man I have seen, he has lots of power within this sect of reptilians, and he's someone that you would want to watch out for outside of this too, as is this Sitchin person.
What do you remember about Zachariah Sitchin?
Zachariah Sitchin was someone in the rituals attending the rituals who was not a major player in as far as the rituals went, but was someone that others present did not make remarks at, or were very careful as to what they said around him. And he was talking about, he would be talking about doing away with people, persons that were in his way, or were putting out information that he didn't feel that he wanted put out. He is very much a disinformer, and that is his job, to disinform about what is going on with the Illuminati and with the reptilians.
He actually warned me off from investigating the reptilians, interestingly. Where do the rituals take place that you've been involved in, involving the British royal family?
Glamis Castle, Stonehenge, Balmoral Castle. I have reason to believe there's a church, and I think it may be Westminster Abbey. And there is a Mothers of Darkness castle or chateau in Brussels, Belgium. They've been there too. And also in France, the Marquis de Libero Pindar has a castle in the Alsace-Lorraine region of France, and I believe it's in the Alsace region that he uses, and there are certain rituals done at that castle down in the dungeon part of that castle, and there's an entrance down there to underground places in the earth, and there is a natural formation of rocks that kind of glow green, and they keep menstrual blood in that formation, and this green glowing from these rocks actually turns the blood a darker color, and it's called black blood, and it's used in certain rituals. But there are also, they keep small, there are smaller, less developed little reptilians that are kept down there. They're kind of pets. But one other thing that's also down there, there are eggs. It's like a nest of eggs kept down in that part where it's warm. It's very warm down there into this entrance, and these eggs are kept down there incubating, and they are the reptiles' eggs, and that's where they keep them.
What are your memories of conducting the rituals for the royal family? What happened? What were they doing?
One thing that sticks out in my mind is that there was before. This was back in the late 70s. This was before Charles was married to Diana. He was involved with Kamala Parker Bowles, and she does not shapeshift, but she became pregnant by Charles, and she produced a baby, and this baby was presented at the ritual and killed, and that is the price, the firstborn between these two, and eventually these two will marry, and that is the price that is to be paid, the sacrifice of the firstborn between the union of these two people. And I've seen that there. Something else that sticks out in my mind is that it was around the late 80s that I saw a very kind of dark man he was Arabic. It seemed to be Arabic or Egyptian, and I heard the name Fayed being mentioned, and the Queen Mother was there, and I called her the Black Queen, and she and he were talking very seriously and at some length about a subject. They were mentioning Diana, and they were mentioning his son Dodi. And at the time, I didn't know who Dodi was. I knew who Diana was. I never saw her at any rituals.
Where did this conversation take place?
This took place at Balmoral Castle. And I heard them talking about a marriage between these two, and I thought at the time, well, she's married to Charles. How can there be a marriage when she's married to Charles? I didn't understand why the Queen Mother and this person that I now know to be Dodi Fayed's, because I heard Fayed, Muhammad al-Fayed, talking, and I'd seen them together at, I saw them at Balmoral Castle. I overheard the conversation at Balmoral, but I'd seen them also at Mothers of Darkness Chateau in Brussels, and they were talking about a union between Diana and his son Dodi back in the late 80s, and I did not understand at that time, because I understood Diana to be married to Charles. I knew that she was married to Charles, and they had 2 children, and they were about to have another. And the Queen Mother, all I could pick up was that for some reason that there was a malevolence towards Diana. And Diana I had never seen at a ritual. I wondered what she knew about all of this.
What have you seen the royal family do, the Queen Mother, and the other people you've seen in the rituals? What have you seen them do?
I've seen all of them drink human blood and consume human flesh, and they have their own goblets in which they have blood, and these goblets are encrusted with jewels, and they also have their own daggers, and that the dagger goes into the goblet, and they stir the blood around with it, and it's also a what it is. It's a symbol of the phallus going into the vagina when they're doing this, and I've seen them do this, and some of them have, even like the Queen Mother I saw with, she had her own little, it would like almost, it's between a very elaborate ornate chair or a throne kind of thing brought in for her to sit. And because before these rituals actually start, there is a kind of people move around the room and talk, or recognize one another. It's a formal kind of a ritualistic setup, the way they talk and the way they're introduced. They introduce each other. It's like a court.
What are they wearing?
They're wearing robes. They're not wearing anything underneath the robes, and the robes are very ornate. They all have, the one thing in common they have is they have a red color like blood, and some of them have purple, and they have gold kinds of lines running through them. They have the Merovingian symbol of France, the fleur-de-lis there are jewels that are sewn in at certain points on these robes, and they wear these robes, but they don't wear anything underneath the robes, because what is going to happen, what the rituals are all about, they're going to shapeshift, and they can't have anything on under the robes. And there are orgy kind of things that go on at the rituals also. And
involving the royal family of Britain?
Yes, involving the royal family of Britain, and the sacrifice and the eating of, consuming the sacrifice, and they are involved in that.
And you've seen them do that?
Yes, I have seen them do that.
People in Britain, listening to what you're saying, would obviously be staggered, I guess anywhere in the world, but what would stagger them mostly is, in Britain, the Queen Mother has an image of being the nation's grandmother. The nice old lady, and good old Queen Mum, what a lovely lady. What's your experience of the Queen Mother?
She is very cold in reality, and she is very cruel, and she is very different than she comes across to the public. She's cold-blooded. If she feels that you are someone beneath her, even in the Illuminati, that you're at her equal or your station is above her, she will not speak to you, she will not recognize you. She obviously, from what I see, enjoys consuming human flesh. It's sickening. The one person that she seems to be afraid of is Pindar.
People would also look at the Queen Mother's elderly, frail stature and find it very difficult to see her taking part in rituals and doing anything, if you like, active. Do they go into a different state in terms of age and strength and all these other attributes when they actually shapeshift?
Yes, the human body that they choose to occupy or take when it was young, it ages, but when they take the reptilian form, these reptilians live hundreds of years, and so they have to have taken more than one human body to live in. A lot of them are much, much older, and I'm including the Queen Mother in this, and older than people think that she is. She's been in more than one body, human form. And when the time comes, if it is time for her to go on, it has been chosen that she still has, it's known that she still has life or years to go, again, she will be put into the body, the essence of her, and the reptilian form will go, or the essence of her will go into another body that is also has the ability to shapeshift into reptilian form.
One of the pure reptilian human bloodlines.
Yes.
What happens when, take the Queen Mother as an example, what happens when they shapeshift? I mean, what do you see?
You start to see changes happen, and they're happening so fast that it's almost, it's the closest thing that I've seen to it is what they're now doing with computer technology. It's just a literal transformation that happens very quickly, and they get taller and they get bigger, and they don't look at all as reptilians like they do as humans, and thus the wearing of the robes, because if they were in clothes, the clothes would be torn apart.
So let's take the Queen Mother on this subject as an example. We recognize her as a frail old lady. What does she look like when she shapeshifts at these rituals?
She has, she looks like, the nose portion gets very much longer, and it grows into kind of a snout kind of thing. She has fangs, and incisors as teeth, and there's a tongue. They all seem to have this kind of tongue when they're at this level. The tongue has a lot of long, hairy or pointed projections coming out of it. It's very long, and they have these. They don't have hands or feet. They have these claws, and they have scales, and also scales that seem to kind of disappear into one another, but it's more pronounced on the back. There seem to be lumps or protrusions coming from the head. There seem to be some kind of growth appendages at where, on the back. And they seem folded, and not all of them have that. And there is a tail, and they a lot of times will keep the tail curled. And and I've seen her when she's very displeased with something, as I've seen other members like this. This tail is whipped around. Very agitated, and they do, and she hisses.
What color are they?
Which one in particular?
Take the Queen Mother as an example.
She's kind of a beige color on the underside, and by the time you're going up around to the back and the tail and the top of the head and on top of the nose, snout, whatever, it's coming to a very, they're dark speckles or large speckles of dark browns. And the eyes, usually, they're large, they look like, they're very round, and they look like they're coming out of their sockets, and very protruding. And usually the color ranges from a beige to a gold to a dark greenish gold, and then there's this dark slit up and down, a vertical slit. And and the eyes will look hooded. And when they look hooded, it's a very frightening thing, because it seems that when the eyes are hooded, they're about to do something.
What do you mean by hooded?
The lids come down, and it's almost, I guess it would be the same thing in a human as an expression of that someone's got an idea.
And how tall are they when they shapeshift?
They're just about 7 feet tall. Some are a little shorter, or to a foot shorter. Some are a little bit taller than 7 feet.
So what would the Queen and Prince Charles look like in their reptilian form?
As to height?
As to general appearance?
Charles resembles in both ways, in human form and in reptilian. He resembles Pindar. He's shorter, though, in reptilian form than Pindar, but the way that the reptilian the nose shapes into the snout at that point, and the jaw becomes the underpart. It's very much like Pindar, and his mother doesn't look quite the same as he does.
What does the Queen look like?
The Queen, she's darker, not quite so pale. She's darker. All over, she doesn't have the amount of I would call it freckling. It's more like a gradual, like the skin is gradually getting darker. It's more smooth. And she does have the lumps up around her head and down the tail, the spine. Charles has the tails down around the spine, and funny enough, he has the protrusions from the skull in the reptilian form, where about or above, right above where it seems like his ears would have been.
What is it about the rituals that allow the shape-shifting to happen? When the victims are starting to be sacrificed, it's the scent of the blood, and they start shape-shifting at that point in time, and they can hardly wait to get to the blood. It's like they're addicted to the blood, and then the consumption of human flesh that follows. What have you seen the Queen or any of the royal family do in relation to that? Have you seen them sacrifice and consume human flesh?
There are certain times when they will actually do a sacrifice, or there will have been someone doing a sacrifice, and it's not happening fast enough for them. So they will step in and finish it themselves, because the ritual has to be gone through. It's sacrificially, ritualistically, it has to have been gone through, and they will step right in and just start tearing the throat out, and they're getting all this blood from the jugular vein at the same time. And that has happened when there are many there that are going to be sacrificed, and they just can't wait, and tearing into the contents of the abdomen and stomach of a victim afterwards.
Who have you seen do that?
I've seen the Queen Mother do that, and Prince Philip and Charles. I've seen Guy de Rothschild do this. It seems that I've seen it more among royalty, or so-called royalty, do this than people that are not titled. They don't seem to. They seem like it feels like they don't dare, but they shape-shift nonetheless. But it's like the royals that step in and just start tearing away, as they can hardly wait.
How long can they hold the reptilian form in these occasions?
During the rituals, it's much easier for them to hold the reptilian form. They can stay in that form. What it is that they have a hard time holding their human form. And as long as they're around blood and the scent of blood, they can't hold human form.
Right. Where do you think the story of Diana fits into all this, in terms of the ritual that you know about? And the royal family background that you know about? What was all that about? What happened in Paris?
Diana was a ritual sacrifice because she's named after a goddess, Diana. She was chosen from before birth for the purpose of which she served. I understand and very well, and am very empathetic towards Diana, because in a way it parallels what happened to me, to have served your purpose, had 2 children, and then be tossed aside. And to her horror, though, she obviously never attending a ritual, she knew something was happening, and she knew what was going on and could not be trusted to be at a ritual anyways. I don't think that Diana would have attended a ritual. I don't think that they could get her to cooperate in this act, because she actually saw for herself that this was going on after she married Charles.
Was there any way, when Diana was married to Charles, without attending a blood ritual, that she could have seen him or one of the others become a reptile?
They have a tendency when they're asleep to shapeshift, and they have to consciously hold their form, and when they're asleep they have a tendency to not hold human form and to shapeshift into reptilians. And there could be other things that happen. I'm thinking about the times that Diana would have gone through a menstrual period. Well, that would have also really triggered some of these people in the royal family that are reptilian around her to want to shapeshift. Or any woman, any human woman in that household that would be having a period, that scent of blood would tend to cause a momentary shapeshift.
What was the whole, what appears to be a ceremony surrounding her assassination? What was that about? The rumours that she was pregnant, the Egyptian Dodi Fayed, and the place where it all happened, which is an ancient sacrificial site to the goddess Diana. How does all that fit together in the rituals that you know about?
Okay, the crown aspect of the goddess is Hecate, and the day of Hecate is on August 13th. And what is very prevalent in this with the Illuminati and what they've done with the Druidism and other and Egypt, the Egyptian religions, is they like to mirror the numbers. And so as like, for example, with the goddess Isis, her number is 18. When you mirror it, it's 81, and that is the number of the sister of Isis, Nephthys. And Nephthys was considered the evil sister to Isis. With Hecate, what I think happened here is that she was sacrificed, and it was a very important sacrifice because 3 people died, and it was a picture of the triad of Isis, Osiris, and Horus to them. Horus being the unborn child of Dodi Fayed that Diana carried, and was 3 months old, which is another very important fact, a number that's important to them, to be 3 months old. Sacrificial babies are taken in utero at 3, 5, and 7 months. And when I heard about this was a deal that I understood now had gone down. And she had to die in that tunnel because that tunnel's the passageway for Diana, the goddess. And she died at the 13th pillar again because of Hecate. And she died on the 31st because it's the mirror image of 13. And my understanding of what I get inside of me, and because I was told by Baron Guy de Rothschild last beginning of February when he was in this country and he was there to try and reprogram me again and impregnate me, was that he was in the tunnel that night. He had to be there because not only was it a ritual death of Diana, this was also about taking her soul. And he was taking the soul of Diana, which no one else there could do. Whoever was present there could not do it. He could do it. And he was in France.
This is the hypnotic stare you talk about.
Yes. And drawing in the breath. And he had to be there to do this ritual killing, this ritual murder.
This would mean that the ambulance team and a doctor that arrived within a minute of the crash coming the other way must have been in on this whole deal, or at least the people in charge of the ambulance team. From your experience of the kind of people involved in this Illuminati satanic network, do you think that's possible, that they could set that up?
Yes, I do. I've seen a lot of things set up that if you did not know, if you weren't in on the so-called inner circle, or know what the Illuminati can do because they depend on people not believing they're really there, you would not, you would have a hard time believing it. That this has been such a secretive group and worked in such insidious ways to infiltrate and control. And there are so many unanswered questions they don't seem to be able to answer about Diana that keep coming up in spite of all the reports that come out, because there are people that don't believe what they're hearing.
What would have been the purpose of creating such a clear and definite ritual in the assassination of Diana? What would be the purpose of that when they could have killed her in another way?
Because it had to be done as a ritual, because they were going to take her soul. And it had to happen in the tunnel. It had to happen that way. It had to happen in that year. And this is all, there's all a timeline to all of this.
There's been many rumors that she was pregnant, but as I understand it, one of her friends says that was not possible because she knew that very shortly before she'd had a menstrual period. Is it possible to be pregnant and for that to still happen?
Yes, it is. This happened to me. I was impregnated with one of my own fertilized egg that was fertilized by the sperm of Pindar, and he sent Guy de Rothschild to impregnate me in this manner, and I was impregnated in October of '94. I had periods up until February when it was discovered, and they seemed normal, not light. And I then was, since I had the background of a nurse, and had worked with a nurse midwife delivering babies, for some reason it occurred to me to check my stomach, my abdomen, and I realized that I was pregnant, and so I ended up seeing a doctor who told me, he verified, you're pregnant. He did it with blood test, with the urine test, and ultrasound exam, and if I don't do an abortion on you tomorrow, you're going to have to go through a different type of abortion, which probably would have been a saline abortion. And I knew what I was pregnant with by that time, and so I was terrified to go through with it, and I could not go through with it, knowing what I knew, and so I had the abortion, but I had periods the whole time.
You were impregnated at the point that it happened without you having any knowledge of it?
No, I did not.
Is it possible that that happened to Diana, if she was, as the evidence that I've looked at suggests, also mind-controlled and a multiple from the early part of her life?
That is definitely more than a probability. The thing about being multiple or dissociative identity disorder is that the host person doesn't know that they are, but they have missing time, but then they have amnesia for the missing time. They don't realize they're missing time. They don't realize things are happening to them. They show up, pregnant. They show up with marks on their bodies. They don't know, I think I must have bumped myself, and that's not actually how it happened. Or they have needle marks on their body when they've been gotten a hold of and drugged. And it's only when they start to realize something's not right and they try and make a timeline and try and account for their time, they realize there's so much they can't account for that they simply took for granted. Oh, I was out shopping, or I was at this person's house, or I was over there. Then they realize they don't have a timeline for any of these things.
Do you think that Diana's two children were Prince Charles's children?
I do not believe that William is. I've heard that he was Charles's son. I've heard about someone else, and I believe that it was neither. I believe that this child of Prince William is the son of Pindar, and she was impregnated, and she did not realize that.
When you look at the ritual nature of all that, you've got Osiris, it would seem, symbolized by dirty fire. You've got Isis, symbolized by Diana. Presumably the baby, quite obviously, symbolizes Horus in Egyptian legend and ritual. Why create that in a tunnel in Paris at that time? What was it designed to do, to symbolize or whatever?
It's to symbolize, it's part of symbolizing getting the world ready to recognize the Horus that is about to come upon us in the year 2000, as the year 2000 is the age of Horus and Osiris reborn, and there's a sacrifice involved, and the sacrifice is the mother, and the sacrifice is this child, and yet it involves another child who yet lives by the same mother. And
you're talking about William?
Yes, I am talking about William.
What would have happened to Diana in your experience of the ritual and what would have happened to the unborn child after the events in the tunnel in Paris?
That Diana left the tunnel dead. She didn't leave that tunnel alive. That ritual, she had to die in that tunnel, and they had to take her soul in that tunnel, and they had to take the soul or developing essence of the unborn child, and in the hospital it follows logically, according to what I know about what they do, that they would have taken the uterus and the fetus from Diana, that would have been taken, and as a ritual that would have been taken, and they would have removed other body parts.
And done what?
Distributed them for high Illuminati members to consume, because this is a ritual sacrifice.
Some strange things happened after that. Strange things happened all the way through it. But suddenly the decision was made that she would not be buried in the local church where she wanted to be buried, but on an island among the trees in a lake at Althorpe Park. And Earl Spencer, her brother, claims through a dream he was inspired to put 4 black swans on the lake. Therefore, from your, again, knowledge of the ritual, what does all that mean? Why do that?
Because 4 black swans have to do with 4 directions, 4 seasons. They have to do with sealing something for all eternity. To have 4 of something black like that swan's figure in Celtic mythology, quite a bit in the Druid mythology, and black is the color of Hecate, and one of the goddess aspects, the 3 goddess aspects that they have, the name is Black Flame or Black Star, and Black Flame means unto death, and so therefore the color black, and somewhere in there would be a flame.
The decisions after her death to put her on an island among the trees in a lake and the 4 black swans were all, at least on the surface, taken by her brother Earl Spencer. Have you any experience of him?
Earl Spencer I have seen at rituals. He's definitely tied into it. Her family has been part of this. She has this bloodline. I have not seen him shapeshift, but he's tied into it.
You've seen him at rituals in
yes, I have.
Sacrifices took place?
Yes, I have.
What about her father? Any knowledge of him?
Her father was present at rituals. Her father would have been involved way before Diana was born. For her to have been involved and watch her actions after she was married, cutting herself, being anorexic, being bulimic, these are so indicative of someone who has been involved in mind control, has been hurt, has been forced to follow mind programming. That this would have started when she was a little child, and her father would have been involved.
So if they got her into this mind control stream from birth, presumably they would have been able to shape events right from that point to the 13th pillar.
Yes. Yeah, they would have. When somebody becomes what we call multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder. There are many programs that are induced, that can be induced at any point. I mean, you've got the machinery in place when they're a very small child, and as they're grown, they can install programs at any point and have different parts hold these programs, and they can be made to do just about anything. They're taught things such as red light is a green light, go through the light. They drive faster than they realize they're driving. They are able to memorize or see and just glance at something and right away just pick what the point is that they're going after for some reason, or they can memorize phone numbers in just a glance.
The car hit the 13th pillar, driven by Henri Paul, who was missing for 3 hours that night, a man who's been connected to both British and French intelligence. Given the obsession with the number 13, it seems beyond coincidence that with all those pillars in the tunnel, it hit the 13th. Is it possible to mind control someone like Henri Paul so that at speed they could pick out the 13th tunnel, the 13th pillar?
Yes, yes, it is. He also, it's very, very possible that he was drugged and programmed in the time he was missing. It's possible for him to have taken medication but not have it affect him at all.
Does that include alcohol?
Alcohol also, yeah. And then maybe later or not, it would affect him, depending on if that's what the program was for it to affect him. But it might not affect someone at all. I've been through this myself, so I know this to be true. And
what happened to you in this instance?
It was a very bad time in my life. The one time in particular I'm speaking of, where my then husband told me that he wanted a divorce, and I took approximately 8. I don't remember what the dosage was, but 8 Xanax pills in front of him, and I drove from where I lived in Orange County to the Norwalk area and went to see my therapist, who was holding some groups in this area, and I did not feel the effects of the pills at all when I drove to see him. I did not feel the effects of the pills at all when I left there an hour and a half later. And I had no car accidents. I was not stopped. My driving skills were very good. And I've seen this happen with other people that have had the mind control programming and this DID, and you just swallow up medication and one part holds on to it and it does not affect the body.
So if you're in a compartment that is not connected to taking the pills, you're not affected by it. But if you were put into that compartment that took the pills, if you like, you would be affected by them.
Yes, and you can also have, what they can do with you is have a whole bunch of alters or parts lined up that, okay, you will be out from this point to this point, and then this next part, will be out at from this point to this point. They can keep going like that. It can be a very complicated, long thing, but they can line them up that way. That's the way the programming goes.
Do you think this could explain the apparent mystery of a alcohol reading of Henri Paul that was equivalent to eight Scottish on an empty stomach, while the video evidence of the Ritz Hotel security cameras is that this was not a man in the minutes before he drove Diana into the tunnel that was in any way at that level of drunkenness.
Yes, that can very well explain it. With this kind of mind control programming that they do, once you go into that mode that they want you in, you can be hurt and in a lot of pain, or you can be drugged to the gills, or have drunk too much, and you appear to be in no pain at all, appear to be perfectly with it, and you don't feel it. You feel all right.
People would find it difficult, just coming from their own experience and observation, that someone could drive a car into a tunnel at considerable speed and pick out among 30 odd the 13th pillar. How is that possible to program someone to do that?
Because that someone has been taught and programmed and taught and programmed and taught for quite a while how to do this at a very fast speed. The mind works very fast, and if they have the mind and body connected the right way, they can drive. This person would have been able to drive into the 13th pillar at a fast speed.
Would that have been happening on a conscious level, or would the subconscious have been pulling the strings?
This would be on a subconscious level, and the person would not be aware themselves of what they were doing.
In those crucial minutes before Henri Paul got in the car and drove away, would someone have had to have given him the trigger to access and activate the programming then? Or could he have been in some way pre-programmed to be triggered at that time? And if so, what would that be?
Well, he was probably programmed to do all of this at a trigger signal. And so what happened is that somebody triggered him with a preset signal that he was told, when you are given this signal, you will act out. But the program was already set to go off when the trigger, when he saw the trigger. What
form could this trigger have taken?
It could have been a hand signal. It could have been a certain type of handshake. It could have been a color that he saw that was flashed in front of his face. It could have been a certain person doing a hand signal. It's most likely that there was a person present that he was to react to when this person said something or signaled him in some way.
Given the extent of your programming from birth, how was it possible for you to break out of it, as you appear to have done now?
One thing that happened is that in 1989, my programmer handler died, who was Mengele. And he was in this country so much, and I was around him so much, and he had a lot of control over me. And what happens when a programmer handler dies, they usually have taught the person that they've been working with, to be very, very loyal unto death to them. And that's something that they, in the end, it works against everything, because when they die, even someone else coming in and trying to take over, a lot of these altars are not open to that and are loyal to that one person. And in my case, Baron Guy de Rothschild is the one that tried to take over. And for some number of years, there was a lot of the time, half the time they got their way, and half the time they didn't. And in major things, they did not get their way. One of the things that I went out and did in 1993 was I cut my hair off, and because I was publicly seen and known to have very, very long hair, I could no longer be seen. I could not be seen with my hair cut off short. This would have caused a lot of questions with other people that had been programmed. And they still tried to carry on with other parts where I wouldn't have to be publicly seen, because they still consider me to hold this status, and they still consider me their property. I was always told I was their property.
One question that people would ask is, given all that you know, why don't they just take you out?
They still have plans for me, and this was told to me just a few days ago by someone else who has spoken with Baron Guy de Rothschild, that they have plans for me, and they plan to try to have me back because of the psychic abilities, and that is not going to happen.
In the little bit of tape we've got left, could we just turn the subject to the jury you've got to your left there? What is that? Was that part of the rituals that you were involved in?
The first one, this is a child's ring. It is a 14-karat gold white, or 14-karat white gold ring with a diamond in the middle of a hexagram, or a hexagonal shape, and it looks like a hexagon if you were able to look closely at the diamond. This was returned to me by my ex-husband, who told me, well, this was in your daughter's clothes. And this was a message to me, and it was a trigger to me for him to do this. Any high-ranking survivors that I have talked to that know of this ring know that it's from Mothers of Darkness. And it would be very unusual. I mean, I don't know of anyone else that has a ring like this in their possession at this point in time.
And what's the necklace?
The necklace here is made out of copper, and it's very Egyptian, and it was given to me when I turned 19, and that's an important age because you really start at the position I was at, having these psychic powers in full effect and being allowed to do this in full effect during rituals, and this was worn during certain rituals. Why
copper, and why have it at all?
Copper is a transmitter. Copper has always been used in the occult. It has a specific meaning. The meaning it has is because I had a triad of altars that were very active in a lot of rituals, and the triad was Isis, Osiris, and Horus. And Isis was the part that drew down the moon, and Osiris performed the rituals, and Horus was what was born of performing those rituals.
Just in the literally 3 minutes we got left, 3 or 4 minutes, I know it's difficult, but I want people to understand the nature of what's going on to so many people today. What sort of things were done to you as part of your traumatization as a child and later?
I was electroshocked to the extent that my parents were told when I was in first grade that my IQ was 70 and that I was retarded, and they said I would be retarded. I always had trouble in school when I was in school because I missed so much school. My school records are missing. They've just disappeared. I have medical records that are missing. My birth certificate appears to have been tampered with. I have had my eyelids taped open, and so I couldn't shut my eyes. I have been electroshocked. I've been put into a narcoleptic sleep and had earphones placed over my ears and had messages repeated and repeated for days. I've had drugs injected into my body so that my nerves were just like on fire, and then they would just touch me. I've had, since I wasn't allowed to have marks on my body, they couldn't use a cattle prod on me, but they do use cattle prods on people in torturing them, and they do use electrical stimulation to the genitals and also on the teeth. And they like to inject between the toes and under the fingernails and up in the gums. I've also had some kind of scarring done up through the roof of my mouth all the way up to the brain stem back here that gives me a photographic memory. And I have calcium blocks around the pineal gland that seem to be perfectly spaced and even, and it's very, very curious. The doctors can't seem to come up with a reason for that. I have been programmed to be anorexic, to be bulimic. For the government programming, since I was also used by the government in this country, I was programmed to cut my arms if I started to remember, which I was punished for by the Illuminati, as I was not to have these marks upon myself. I was made to eat my own feces as a little child. I was made to drink my own urine. I was not allowed to go to the bathroom. I was placed in a sensory deprivation tank. I had my shoulders, my knees, my toes, and my fingers, my elbows dislocated and then put back into place when they wanted me to be traumatized. I've repeatedly had phone calls of tones coming over my phone, and tones that you can't make by pressing telephone buttons, tones that sound like sonar sounds from a submarine, tones that sound like they were made by some type of instrument. And I have had directed energy used on me, ELF, low-frequency electric waves used on me, microwave energy, and this in turn has created two different, would hear one tone in one ear, one tone in different tone in the other ear. It creates a third tone. They're called tritones. They change the electrical activity of your brain waves and to put you in the state they want you in. I have been programmed to run through red light, thinking it's green. There's been a lot of programming done around my children. They've used my children against me. And it's a very painful subject with me. To know that this is happening to my children. The same thing that's happened to me. It's easier, I don't know if I can make people understand this. It's easier for me to have, okay, I can handle that I went through this. And what I want most is to expose these people because of what they're doing to children all over. But they're doing it to my children too. And my daughter believes I've abandoned her. My son believes I abandoned him. And they don't have hope when they're children. They don't have hope when their mother's taken away from them and they're told that their mother just left them. So this is a cycle that goes on with thousands and thousands of survivors, not just myself. And this is how they perpetuate it if there is a parent that's protective that believes and has found out this is happening.
The astonishing revelations of Arizona Wilder, a very, very brave lady who's chosen to stand up and be counted. And only by enough people doing that is this nonsense and this manipulation going to be brought to an end, as it is in the next few years? Well, we've come to the end of our little tour of the centre of global control, and we're here now outside the Houses of Parliament in London, the so-called mother of parliaments, because of course it has provided the blueprint for so many other so-called democracies all around the world, when in fact it's just another vehicle for the one-party state that is relentlessly turning out legislation advancing this global centralization agenda. Not a place of democracy at all, a place for legislating the agenda into reality. Well, you've heard the information and possibly read it in The Biggest Secret at greater length also. The question is, what are we going to do about it? That's entirely up to you as an individual and me as an individual. As someone once said, what you think of me is none of my business, and it's not. This is just information, make of it what you will. But what we make of it and what we decide to do in the light of this knowledge will decide the kind of world that we and our children are going to live in the next few years and beyond. The Chinese have a word that means at the same time both danger, crisis and opportunity. And that's the situation we're in now. Yes, there's a crisis. Yes, there's a danger of this global fascist state becoming reality, but it's also an opportunity to wake up and make the change that will turn this planet from a prison into the paradise it once was and the paradise it will become again. And that is about choice. Choosing what we do as a result of what we know. And I quote in my books a number of times an American comedian called Bill Hicks, a genius in his way, very angry man, but a very brilliant man, a very profound man. And he described life in this way. He said, life's like a ride in an amusement park. And when you go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. The ride goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills. And it's very brightly coloured. And it's very loud. And it's fun for a while. Some have been on the ride for a long time. And they remember and they come back to us and they say, hey, don't be afraid ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut him up. I've got a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry and my family and my big bank account. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try to tell us that and let the demons run amok. But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. In other words, it's just a reflection of our own attitudes. And to change, as Bill Hicks said, doesn't need big bank accounts. It just means a choice right now between fear and love. Fear is the four-letter word that has controlled this planet and this human race for thousands of years. Love is the word that will set us free. And that's the choice we face now. And the world that those two choices will create will be so different as to be unexplainable. The chasm between the two. A prison or a paradise. I just want to say one other thing before we finish this video. I don't want to demonize the reptilian race, because it's just a genetic stream in the great forever. I'm talking about a small number of this reptilian race that is behind this manipulation, not the race in general. And indeed, many of the reptilian stream, both in physical bodies and in other dimensions, are working now to help humanity win their freedom, win our freedom back. And I'd like to thank once again also Arizona Wilder for having the guts to stand up and speak her truth. And if enough people do that, then this house of cards, because that's all it is in the end, is going to fall. And I'd like to thank also my friend Brian Desborough for helping Arizona and for his own commitment to truth. We're now at the crossroads of the evolution of the human race, or a crossroads anyway. And the good news is this: there is a global awakening going on. I've spoken in something like 20 countries in the last 18 months. People are waking up. They're asking questions. They're seeing themselves and the world in a different light. And this is going to gather pace and is gathering pace all the time. And it's this transformation of human thought and perception that is going to bring the change that we've dreamed about for so long. Dreams are merely imagination which can be made reality if we're prepared to do what is necessary to achieve that. That's the challenge we face now. It's a wonderful, wonderful time to be alive, and we're all privileged to be here to play a part in setting this world free for the first time in known human history. From the epicenter of global control, but not for very much longer. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.